There's a theory circulating online with millions of views that makes a very specific, very disturbing claim. Every time humanity upgrades its telecommunications networks, a global respiratory pandemic follows. The most recent piece of evidence they point to is the rollout of 5G networks, which began wide commercial deployment in 2019. That same year, the first cases of COVID-19 were identified, eventually leading to global lockdowns and an immense human toll. The theory traces this pattern backward. The creators point to 2009, noting the introduction of 4G networks happened concurrently with the swine flu outbreak. Go back further, and they link the 1991 debut of 2G to influenza A and the first 1G networks in 1979 to the Russian flu. The theory asks if these dates reveal deliberate tampering with the human respiratory system through electromagnetic fields, and if so, does the projected launch of 6G around 2030 guarantee our next global lockdown? To see if this holds up, we need to map the data exactly as the theory presents it. This timeline plots the major telecom rollout years on the top axis and the corresponding virus years directly below them. The alignment is incredibly compelling. Every major technological leap seems to drop a perfect vertical line down to a new biological threat. But a correlation on a graph doesn't prove a cause. To show that a cell tower actually creates a sickness, we have to look at the physical mechanics of how these two things interact. So how exactly could a network upgrade compromise human lungs? Cellular networks transmit data using non-ionizing radiation. This means the radio waves they emit operate at a frequency so low they physically lack the energy required to break atomic bonds or damage human DNA. They pass through our biological cells without altering their structure. Infectious respiratory diseases are driven by physical entities. Viruses are microscopic biological agents that replicate inside hosts and spread through physical transmission, like airborne droplets. There is simply no biological pathway for a low-energy radio wave to spontaneously generate or mutate an organic virus. The theory collapses when we test the integrity of its states. Zooming out on our chart reveals the vast stretches of time the original video ignored. For instance, the deadly SARS outbreak swept through multiple countries in 2003, a year completely devoid of any new generational network launch. Similarly, the massive 2014 Ebola epidemic occurred entirely isolated from any telecom upgrade. Furthermore, the top axis relies on a misunderstanding of how technology works. A G network doesn't launch globally on a single day. These are staggered deployments that take years, sometimes a decade, to reach different countries. Once you include the major outbreaks that were skipped and adjust the technology dates to reflect their actual multi-year deployments, that perfect one-to-one correlation dissolves into a random scatterplot of unrelated events. If the data doesn't align, why do so many people believe it? The answer lies in apocynia, the human brain's hardwired tendency to find meaningful patterns in random information. This instinct goes into overdrive during global crises. When we are faced with the random, terrifying chaos of a natural pandemic, it feels much safer to point the finger at a visible, human-made corporation. The deep trauma of the 2019 lockdowns created an intense need for a clear villain. The 5G theory provided one exactly when people were most desperate for answers. The 1G to 5G pattern is a psychological byproduct of crisis, a way for a terrified world to assign a face to an invisible biological threat. Which brings us back to the looming question, the arrival of 6G, projected around 2030. The reality of biological evolution means that another respiratory outbreak in the next decade is entirely possible. Viruses constantly mutate, and historical averages suggest we will face new strains. But if a new pathogen does emerge in 2030, our upgraded cell phones and the towers that power them will have absolutely zero physical connection to it. In the end, humanity's real, true danger comes from allowing our own fear to blind us to actual, measurable science.